Morning Tri-Cities. It's 9 o'clock on Friday, and this is Coffee with Karl. I think the music this morning set the tone for our discussion. Today, we're going to be talking about the arts community in the Tri-City and the resiliency that they've been able to show as we've gone through COVID. So I'll go around and make some introductions. I'm going to start because she was the first one to come back on the screen with Dee Boyle, who is the chair of the Kennewick Arts Commission. Good morning, Dee. Excuse me.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Next on my screen is Devin Diaz, the founder of DrewBoy Creative. Good morning, Devin.
Morning, Karl.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And last but very much not least, we have Debra, Pearse, Rogo, and Joel Rogo, who represent both the Tri-Cities Academy of Ballet and the Mid-Columbia Regional Ballet. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning, Karl.
Thanks. I understand it's early, but we appreciate you guys coming on with this, and it's great to see both of you together. This is awesome. So as always on Coffee with Karl, we start off with talking about our mugs or coffee. So I looked for something that was relevant to talk about, but I have some artwork from my daughter from, quite a few years ago. She loves Disney World. So it's actually Mickey and Minnie that obviously we've commemorated on a cup or a mug. And that's my art. It's probably not going to measure up to what you guys have, but let's go to the Rogos. What do you guys have to share with us this morning for coffee or mugs?
Oh, very fitting.
Mine is a Nutcracker mug.
That is awesome.
Isn't that awesome? And I love the Nutcracker mug because but I mostly love this Nutcracker mug because it's really big, so I can have a lot of coffee.
And this is a mug, a Nutcracker mug that was given to me by my daughter. And I know the picture's faded a little bit. This mug is 25 years old. The picture may be faded, but the love is not. So there's my daughter
there she is, down there as a little one, down here.
Oh,
yeah.
That is awesome. That's great. Let's go to Dee next. Dee, what's your coffee story or mug?
Well, this is a local plug. I have a Rockabilly Roasters mug, and I am drinking their coffee. Rockabilly is also an awesome supporter of art in downtown Kenwick. So shout out to them, and also just for having fantastic coffee that I drink all hours of the day.
That's awesome. And, since I'm going to call myself the new person in the Tri-Cities until somebody tells me I'm not, but I haven't had a chance to drink Rockabilly Roasters coffee. If you go in, do they play Rockabilly music?
Well, I don't believe I've heard them play Rockabilly music in there, but that doesn't mean they haven't. But they have a coffee subscription. Where you can just get their coffee sent to your home. It is incredible.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, and they're remodeling their space right now. Anyway, Rockabilly, 10 out of 10 recommend.
Very good. And Devin, what do you have for a mug or coffee story for us this morning?
This morning, I brought out my Beatles Yellow Submarine mug. Personally, I'm a White Album or Abbey Road album, but I do love the Beatles. They're a foundation for my youth, and actually even part of my own artistic expression. That's
awesome. That's really cool. I have to say, on HBO this week, I've been watching because I don't watch the whole thing. I just watch as I flick through TV the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and they had T-Rex on, and it was cool because T-Rex was talking about, and Ringo actually introduced them, for the induction, and they talked about the connection with the Beatles, and then they were saying like T-Rex in England kind of like appealed.
Okay, it looks like Karl's frozen just a bit.
Oh man, just when I was getting my cool T-Rex story.
There it is.
All right. Come on, internet.
Oh, good.
You guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll jump right into it. Since I am new, self-disclosed, let's just go around and tell me a little bit about each of your arts organizations or businesses, and even if it's outside of what you actually are responsible for. But I think the arts community is pretty connected, so feel free to talk about some of those connections too. And let's stick with Devin and talk about DrewBoy and some of your other arts organizations here.
Thank you, Karl. DrewBoy Creative was founded in 2015. It's actually named after my brother. People often will ask me, "Are you Drew?" And it's like, "No, I'm Devin." But my brother Andrew passed away in 2014, and so as I was creating the organization or the nonprofit, I named it after him, and so that's why the DrewBoy Creative. And it's interesting that Dee brought up rockabilly, because I actually had my very first conversation related to DrewBoy in that space, but it was under a previous owner. And Cameron T. Mills and Katie Mills are also artists in the Tri-Cities. And back in 2014, 2015, we started talking about creating a documentary. And it took a minute, but we officially launched the organization in 2015. Since then, we've put on well over 30 art shows, exploring topics from mental health to we did an all women show, I guess, last summer. The timelines get blurry with COVID, but I believe it was last summer, 2019, where we did an all female show where the entire show was produced by women. The artists were women. The art that we hung were curated by women. We even had a playlist that was 100% female artists, and it was created by a female DJ. So from those type of shows, we also do shows around a color. We opened our doors in 2016 with the Red Show. I kind of lucked into that. We opened in February, and one of my friends at the time, we were brainstorming on what type of show we could do. And I said, well, it's February, it's Valentine's Day. Let's just keep it simple and celebrate a color. How about red? And we ran with it, and it's been so successful. We just kept following the color spectrum, and people would ask me, well, what type of color are you going to do next? And I would think about, well, maybe we can do white, or we can do black, or we can do orange. And one day it just appeared to be, well, why not just follow the color spectrum? So 2020 would have been blue. And I can talk about the impact of COVID on the organization in a minute, but if you know your colors, it's a good way to tell you how long we've been around. So we've done a red show, orange show, yellow show, green show. This year would have been blue, and next year will be indigo. But it's an amazing organization. We've been growing every year. I'm always honored and flattered by the support of this community, and I look forward to being a mainstay in the art community moving forward.
And since I haven't had a chance to be there, but do you guys have a dedicated space, or do you move around with DrewBoy, or is it in the same location?
Great question. So our partner is with Confluence Space on Williams Boulevard, which is a maker space. And so they have, when you walk into the space, when you first walk in, there's a gallery / classroom, and then through the doors you walk into a shop, and in that shop they have laser cutters, 3D printers, and then in the back we have everything from a woodworking shop, welding. If you can dream it, you can make it at Confluence Space. And so DrewBoy, what we do is essentially just rent the walls. And prior to the pandemic, we were doing a show about every 45 to 60 days. Art show, excuse me.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't even know about Confluence Space and the Makerspace. That's really cool. That's awesome.
It's a lot of fun.
Well, let's go to Debra and Joel next and talk a little bit about Tri-Cities Academy of Ballet and the Mid-Columbia Regional Ballet. Well,
we own the Tri-Cities Academy of Ballet. That is our business. Mid-Columbia Ballet is a nonprofit. It is a very common business model for dance schools, and especially for ballet schools, that the school is privately held and the performing company is a 501c3 nonprofit.
okay.
And that is the setup that is here in the Tri-Cities. It was here when we bought the business. The Tri-Cities Academy of Ballet was founded in the late 60s, incorporated in the early 70s, and Debra and I bought it in 1987. We were a couple of out-of-work dancers from LA who heard about this little ballet school in Richland, and boom, here we are.
Thought we'd give it a try.
We thought we'd give it a shot, 5 years.
No. 5 years, we made a deal. 5 years, we'd sell and get out.
That was 33 and a half years ago.
Yeah, this is a familiar.
And here we are. But so as I say, Mid-Columbia Ballet is a nonprofit. It's part of the arts groups in the community. And Tri-Cities Academy of Ballet is our business.
All right. And I know I've heard amazing things about the Nutcracker that I think you guys perform every year, but is the Mid-Columbia Regional Ballet, do you always perform in the same place, or, based on the performance, do you move around, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, Mid-Columbia Ballet does perform at different spaces in town.
Okay.
We're always looking for, great theaters and good performance spaces. The Nutcracker, we've always performed at Richland High, mostly because it's the largest space. It has the capacity to seat the number of Tri-Citians that come to the Nutcracker. We also have a set that was built for us, designed for Mid-Columbia Ballet and designed for Richland High space. We had that in the early 90s.
It's been 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
We have a set that was designed for that space. So Nutcracker has not ever moved because the set fits in there like a glove. But other performances that we've always done throughout the season, we move to different locations depending on where, what kind of space it is, what kind of performance it is. And sometimes it's outside, but we move between Richland, Pasco, Kennewick, and as well as kind of outside areas.
Oh, that's great. That reminds me of a question that will come maybe loop back on later in our conversation regarding performance space. And Dee, can you tell me, the new guy, a little bit about Kenwick Arts Commission and what you do in the role? And again, as I read a little bit about your bio, it looks like you're involved in a lot of other art stuff in the community. So feel free to.
Yeah, I mean, my title technically is chair of the Kennewick Arts Commission, but really I'm just a local art supporter, lover, and facilitator, whatever that might mean. Right now that means with public art. I used to be on the board for DrewBoy Creative at a time. I used to be a performance art organizer for the Pasco School District. I've done kind of a bunch of different things to just fill whatever need I see because it's important to me. But with the Kennewick Arts Commission, our whole goal is to facilitate public art to improve quality of life, which generally means placemaking, identifiers, structural, local art, mural art. And obviously in COVID, we've had to really get creative and think about that differently, which I'm sure we're all going to talk about throughout this morning discussion. But really, we just are looking for opportunity to create a better place to live for all of our residents in Kennewick.
That's awesome. Do you guys, and I know the Port of Kennewick has done, a fair amount of public art, and I think it's kind of a corner piece of a lot of their even developments, where they try to have that placemaking art and stuff. Do you guys work closely with the Port as part of the Arts Commission?
Oh, we definitely do. We have liaisons with the Port that we all kind of work together on. It's a really, really great relationship. They can jump on opportunities sometimes that we can't, but we help support and vice versa. And so it's a really, really great relationship we're lucky to have.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to, anybody that's just tuning in, or if you have a question for our panel today regarding resiliency in the art community here in the Tri-Cities, feel free to use the question and answer box down at the bottom if you're on Zoom. If you're on Facebook, you can put your question in the comments, and then we'll work through those questions as we have our conversation. But I just wanted to talk about the connection between our role at TriDec and economic development and the arts in general. And that's really that as we're working to attract companies and help companies grow and even help, new companies start up, and even trying to assist and work collaboratively on bringing new talent into the Tri-Cities that we need for different businesses and jobs. The arts is such a huge part of placemaking. We talked about that a little bit, but we have to have, which we do. And being a new Tri-Citian, I'm just blown away by the amenities in our community, and the arts is obviously a huge part of that. But the arts make our lives better. They give us a better place to live that makes people want to move here. And that's a huge part of our role in attracting companies or people into the Tri-City. So I just wanted to kind of give that plug and talk about the connection a little bit as we transition into talking about how each of you and your organizations have been impacted by COVID, and you know, maybe share a few stories about what you've been able to do, or some of your partner organizations, what's going on. And for anybody that's watching this, you know, they can help out, you know, in that area. And let's go back to Debra and Joel to start off with. And I'm just trying to mix the order up here. So if you guys want to kick it off, how are things going? Obviously, you have been impacted hugely, right? I'm sure that you haven't been able to be open with the academy and being able to have lessons.
We were slammed pretty hard. You know, we were classified as a fitness center. We closed our doors middle of March. We immediately pivot to providing classes on Zoom, which, you know, what happens is we have many students that have been with us since they were 3-4 years old. They're now in high school. They have years and years invested into dance training, and they were on board, not happy, but you know, they're not ready to throw in the towel.
Sure.
We were on Zoom for, well, until September 8th.
Until September.
Then there were some changes made to, you know, the adjusted phase 1 for fitness centers, which did allow us to reopen our doors to limited numbers based on the square footage of each of our dance rooms. So some of our classes are, you know, we have classes where the kids are in the class. If that class is larger than a certain number, then that group is watching online, and they kind of rotate
in and out.
You know, things have certainly changed. It's, you know, the studio's much quieter. You know, parents used to come in and watch their kids in class. You know, we have these big viewing rooms, and that was one of the things we would promote, that you can come watch your kid progress. And of course, that doesn't happen now. Children are dropped at the door and they go to their class.
Everybody's masked.
Everybody is masked. You know, we certainly do all the sanitizing of the equipment.
A lot of cleaning.
And, you know, we're down 60%. It's not easy. After 33 years, you know, we thought we were kind of home free. We were kind of on cruise control and looking for, as old people, you know, looking at taking a little more time off, doing a little more traveling. We thought we had it nailed, but
well, I think that's pretty universal. Everyone's been surprised by COVID. And Joel, I have to say, since you did disclose, or Devin told us before, that you went to high school with Sammy Hagar, I just got to say, like, Sammy Hagar's not old, so there's no way you
That's it. That's the yardstick. Yeah. And for Mid-Columbia Ballet, you know, it's difficult because Mid-Columbia Ballet is a performing organization, and you know, performing means gathering and an audience, and that becomes very complicated. And so we're not going to be able to do that in the normal, what we thought was normal way, for quite some time. So we've had to try lots of new things and to keep our dancers engaged so that they're not just taking classes. They are learning repertory, they are creating, they are rehearsing. Of course, it's all in crazy little spaces. We have little squares taped out on the floor, so everybody stays in their own little space. You know, we have some of our dancers creating at the moment. 6 of our dancers are creating works, and because as Joel said, in our building we can only have certain number of dancers in every space and square footage. And so one of our dancers last week, when we were talking about how many people you wanted, she wanted 24 dancers in her ballet because she had this big piece of music and wanted huge numbers to do this kind of epic thing. And I said to her, honey, it's COVID time. We can only put 10 people in the room. And she said, I forgot. And I was like, that's so nice that you forgot this terrible thing that we all are living under. But you know, she's a teenager, and for her, she had this great sense of that she was going to create, and her mind was ready to work in times that didn't have so many restrictions. So we're making it work in crazy world. Dancers are not allowed to partner. There's just tons of things that but try and make art in And sometimes making art when you have restrictions can make you pivot and be more creative. So yeah, it's an odd time.
Great point, I guess. I am not myself very artistic, but I think that that's a factor in being an artist, right? Is it's literally, it's a cliche, but all in the eye of beholder, and coming up so that it still fits into those categories, whatever that means, but you do it in a different way. In great pivot and a great example of yeah. Let's go to Devin next. How are you guys doing at DrewBoy, and what are some of the changes that you've made, and you know, kind of going through COVID?
That's a great question. In March of this year, we would have hosted the Blue Show, and the color shows the cornerstone or the foundation of DrewBoy Creative, and anywhere from 50% to 75% of our operation revenue comes from that one show. It gives us to take risks with some of the other art shows. And right around February, as a board, we start talking about the pandemic, and so yeah, DBC is a 501c3. It's a nonprofit, and in February we start talking about COVID and what steps would we have to take related to the Blue Show, and in February we actually said, well, we'll take our lead from the school districts, and if the school districts cancel, we'll cancel. But you fast forward into that second week of March, and it started getting real. And so we would have opened the Blue Show on Friday, the 13th of March. And on Tuesday, we took a vote to cancel the show, which was a very tough decision for us at that time. And then we went public with it on that Wednesday. And I know we were one of the first in the Tri-Cities as a whole to pull a plug on an event like that. So that was a very tough decision, but it was a responsible decision. We felt, if you've been to our space, it's really small, but those color shows can bring in 500 people, and the fire code to the gallery is probably right around 75 to 100 people. So we try to stagger it, you know, people coming in and out, but this show would have been our biggest to date. We were going to spill out into the outside, and I had space heaters rented and porta potties rented. It was going to be a huge festival, if you will, to deal with the crowd. But we had to pull the plug, and like I said, it was a tough decision. But what we quickly did was pivot and leaned into the current circumstances, and we put on a virtual show in April called Something Hopeful Please. And you know, creativity is I mean, what DBC likes to do is just kind of let the artist and the community lead the way, and I think that's reflective in that name, Something Hopeful Please, because as we were planning that virtual art show in April, I put it out in social media saying, what should we call this show? And I put comma Something Hopeful Please, because I didn't want, you know, negative and dire. And someone said, that's the title. You should call it Something Hopeful Please. And with social media, the cool thing is you can track likes and responses. So that one had the overwhelming most popular suggested name. And so we did a virtual art show called Something Hopeful Please in April. And people who are watching this can go to DrewBoyCreative.org.com and you can click on the links on there. You can see the virtual art show. It's up now. Having said that, our experience at DrewBoy Creative has always been rooted in the in-person gallery experience. So I have been a little resistant to transitioning everything to virtual, which is why the Something Hopeful Please is our only virtual show. So again, as a board and as a community, we started brainstorming about ways in which we can pivot and not necessarily embrace the pandemic, but operate within the parameters set by the pandemic. And so we launched a membership program where individual, family, or business could subscribe to DBC, and we will deliver art to your home, to your business, and we will rotate that every 90 days. And we launched that about 2 months ago. It's been a soft opening, if you will. And we have had a couple people sign up, so we have members or customers of DBC. What's also cool about that program is that we bought the art. And one of the reasons why DBC as an organization bought the art is that we wanted to put cash into the hands of the working artists. So we now own the art, which is a different business model. We would typically work off of a commission. And so because of the membership program and looking to put cash in working artists' hands, we bought the art. So we've been slowly developing a art collection. And again, if someone wants to learn more about that, you can find us on the web. We're also planning for 21. So to some degree, we've gone into hibernation mode. Okay. And just planning for 21, it's been difficult to predict the phases, and we're open, we're closed, the COVID rates are rising, are we going to shut back down? And so as a board, we just to some degree went into hibernation, and so let's just plan for 21. And so we'll do the Indigo show. We like to do it in person, but we've built the infrastructure to do it digitally if we have to. And then in the summer of 21, we'll be working with the African American Community and Culture Education Society to do a African American show. A good friend of mine, Robin Mitchell, passed away about a year ago, and he was one of my first friends I made in the Tri-Cities. And I wanted to do a show that honored his memory, and he was really active in Access. And he also had done the Martin Luther King celebrations with WSU Tri-Cities, and they always had a strong arts component, both with jazz and visual arts. And so in that, I wanted to do an art show in his memory, and I started working with that organization. And so we'll do hope, fingers crossed, do an in-person show in the summer. If not, we'll postpone it and kind of roll with the punches. But we've also been able to raise about $5,500 that we'll be able to give to artists as stipends, which is also new for DBC. And I just share that with the panel and the community, is that we've been trying to figure out ways that we can put money, cash, back into the working artist's hands. So the membership program is a product of that, and so is the Access show coming up in the summer of 21.
Oh, that's great. Well, I mean, since you purchased all the art, I would think like your business model, if you can get enough subscriptions that you'll, get some monthly revenue to replenish, maybe some of your savings that you did. That's cool. That's a great example of pivoting and, turn it into a positive, and then having contingencies, which I think that's the big thing, is we just don't know when will we end, or when will we hit that next phase. And that's awesome. Well, Dee, what about the Arts Commission in Kennewick, and then other, things that you're involved in? What kind of challenges are out there, and how have you guys kind of stayed resilient through COVID?
Definitely. I mean, starting with the Kennewick Arts Commission, public art specifically is really about placemaking and experience. And neither of those are highly possible in a COVID world. Right. So we've had to really, really, like everyone said, get creative. I will give a lot of credit to the City of Kennewick and the Arts Commission. Kind of pre-COVID world, we were already thinking, okay, as an arts commission, we have done a lot on creating public art, and that will always continue. Some of the roundabout art you've seen, some of structural art you see, whether you're at Clover Island or downtown Kennewick or over near your guys' office, that will always continue. But now how do we expand, especially thinking about entry points for our local artists? We need to kind of have different types of mediums so that our different artists at different levels and different actual mediums that they use can participate in public art, which is kind of a constant conversation we have. And we started working on in the last year, which I have to give huge credit to STCU, who was a partnership in this endeavor, and actually brought it to us, was the traffic box art that we've been implementing. I don't know if you've had a chance to drive around and you see those they're normally just big green, gray, ugly electronic boxes. Obviously, don't trust me with whatever they are, electrical boxes by the traffic lights, and we're wrapping them in art. And it was such a wonderful experience. We got so much more participation locally than we've ever really had in local public art calls. We got a bunch of diversity in style and all. It was just overwhelmingly such a successful project. And we had partnerships with Mustang Sign to get them printed, all these things. And we looked at that project and go, okay, how do we now expand into more of this that creates that participation? And then, of course, COVID hit and happened. Being a part of a municipality, priorities changed. Meetings became a little bit more difficult. We had to kind of pivot and go into virtual meetings. You know, our commissioners are all volunteers. None of us get paid. All of us have day jobs and our own families and lives to take care of in a pandemic. So, you know, of course, it was a lot to just get everyone's brain power as everyone was managing their lives. But we've been able to do it. We get together, we meet. A lot of what we're looking at now is one, we do have some traffic box art that is still being developed and working through approval, which is exciting to have something still work and move forward. We did have a call for art for art that we ended up pulling and holding just because no one can implement or build that currently. And now we're trying to really listen and hear needs of the community. You know, I know that a lot of our commissioners are thinking about the artists themselves. A lot of what Davin spoke to is how do we keep artists creating art and frankly getting paid and still living their lives. And so we've really taken a step back to just listen. A lot of our commissioners are artists themselves. And trying to get kind of some input on how we can support. And a lot of that right now has just been a mouthpiece, and we hear grant opportunities and we hear of opportunities for them. We are constantly pushing people to start commissioning art. I mean, that's the best way to support our artists right now is to put your money where your mouth is. You know, if you're ordering delivery every week to support our local restaurants, commission art for your Christmas gifts this year. You know, it's the same concept. So we're doing a lot of, we're just trying to be the best mouthpiece we can and evaluating what we can do for our artists, in addition to pushing forward some of these projects and thinking about going into the next year when we come up with our work plan that, you know, we have to stay accountable to city council for. How do we now incorporate what we just experienced into that? How do we maybe come up with different programs that do have maybe a more of a virtual element in submission? You know, one thing that I was thinking about was having prints, local prints that people could just buy online, whatever, you know, things like that are better fit for this kind of world to balance that.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, and then everything else, I'm just telling people to buy art. That's it, straightforward. And if you don't know where to buy it from, everyone on this call can tell you where to go.
That's a great point. And it's on that, like the traffic box art, is there a map or something that people can go to just see where they're at so they can kind of keep their eye out for it as maybe they're driving around or something? Yeah.
So there is on the city's website under the Arts Commission, there is a map of all public art in the city of Kennewick that includes those traffic boxes. There might be a few that aren't quite on there because they're just recently installed and we need to update that. But yeah, absolutely. You can go check them out, tour them, get some photos. They're so fun and so cool to just, it's a fun surprise too, where you're just driving around and you're like, oh my gosh, look at that. It's fun. I like it.
Cool. While we're on the subject, do you have a suggested website that people can go to and buy art and support the local art community?
Oh man, that's a really great question. I mean, DrewBoy has a really great job of showing a lot of artists here locally, but I mean, honestly, most individual artists, as they should, have their own websites and their own channels to purchase from. So if you don't know where to find local artists, I just recommend asking somebody. Google's a great tool as well. A lot of these folks you can find online or on Instagram. And it's actually been really cool to see what some of our artists have done in this time of pause to create. You know, I've seen local artists that have moved into different mediums than they normally do and are doing different prints and different photography and all of these things that are just really inspiring to see and are really cool because it's very much related to the time we're in. And all of this art in a way is a piece of history. So, you know, why not own a piece of that?
That's a great point.
And as Dee mentioned, DrewBoy Creative, if people want to commission artwork, we probably get an inquiry at least once a month, sometimes more on commissioning work. And so if you were to go to our website and call the line or drop an email, what we typically do is talk with the individual, the customer, and establish their aesthetic. And once I know a little bit about them and what they're looking for, what type of medium and what type of artwork they're into, I then refer them to a handful of artists and then let them decide on what the content and what the commission will be. In DBC, we do that just as a service to the community. We don't. Some galleries will take a cut. Some galleries put artists under contract for those type of reasons. We don't do any of that. We make zero money off of that. We just do it as a service. And if you do want to see the work in person, Allied Arts does have a gallery or a shop, and I know they're open, so you can go to Allied Arts down by Howard Amon Park and just browse their shop.
And like Kennewick Arts Commission has a program similar, mostly for businesses, where businesses can contact the Arts Commission. There's no fee, there's no contract, much like what Davin is saying, to help facilitate art within business spaces, which I know might be hard. A lot of us are working from home. It's the heart to support the arts. That's another option as well. And the same thing will help facilitate whatever style you're looking for and connect you to the right folks.
Oh, that's awesome. And for anybody tuning in now, in the chat box, Tracy's putting up the websites as you guys talk about them. She's putting them up in the chat. So if anybody's wants to check it out, make sure you turn on the chat so that you can see it. So Debra and Joel, we did have a question I wanted to ask, and I think it relates to what you guys are doing because of COVID for the Nutcracker. But there was a question about how will fifth graders participate in the Nutcracker this year with COVID. And I think you guys had mentioned earlier that maybe there's going to be a video or a documentary around the Nutcracker this year. Do you want to kind of talk about that and answer that question too?
That is, I'm happy to talk about it because it is the project that we are totally immersed in at the moment. I have a very good girlfriend of mine who has a similar kind of organization. She has a for-profit business, her school, and she is director of a nonprofit in Santa Cruz, California. And we were back in the summer having a wine Zoom visit, and we were talking about the fact that what are we going to do this year? For ballet companies to not do Nutcracker is kind of unheard of. And how does that work? And it is the mainstay of a ballet company. And she kind of came up with this idea, and we chatted through and had a couple of glasses of wine about making a movie, and why don't we think about it in this light? So we came up with this idea that we were going to make a movie, and we really had kind of four cornerstones of why we wanted to do this. One was we needed to make sure that our dancers had a chance to perform. They need to be nurtured constantly to be able to continue to be artists. So we wanted to do that. We wanted to make sure we had a COVID-safe holiday experience for our artists as well as for our audience members. That people that come to Nutcracker traditionally with their parents, and they're with their children. And so we want to try and have that continue for them to try and make this kind of as normal as possible. And we wanted to continue to partner with our local partnerships that we have with businesses in the community. And we also wanted to maybe shine a light on some of our local businesses that, have been hit pretty hard in the pandemic. So that was kind of our four ideas. And we talked before about kind of some spaces, unconventional spaces that maybe you perform in. Well, these are way unconventional for us. We have been traveling around the Tri-Cities. We started filming middle of October, and we actually wrap up this coming Sunday with our last shoots. And we have performed in front of, mostly in front of, because most places we're not going inside. About 20 different businesses and 15 locations, well-known locations in the Tri-Cities.
Wow.
And over the course of from the weekends between October and November, we have filmed parts of our Nutcracker in winds of over 25 miles an hour. We had that weekend a couple of weekends ago where it was like 31 degrees that we had girls in tutus outside dancing,
Oh,
which, probably is child abuse, but don't tell anybody that. But so it has been very interesting. We rehearsed the ballet, we rehearsed the scene outside in masks, and everybody is spaced, and we do all of that. We rehearse it a few times. Then the dancers unmask, the crew's all masked, and the dancers unmask, and we film it. And then they all put their mask back on again, and their coats, and all of those things that they're doing. So that's how we've been filming the Nutcracker. The movie will be, we're shooting for an hour. We're editing as we go along. So we don't have a final this weekend is the last shooting. We don't have the final kind of completion yet, but we are hoping for it to be about 1 hour in length. And the movie this year is called Clara's Tri-Cities Nutcracker Dream. And the basic premise of our movie is that Clara's Nutcracker is stolen by a mouse. And she chases the mouse through different locations around the Tri-Cities. We go out to West Richland, to Pasco, to Kenwick, to Benton City, to do wineries. Our party scene is in different wineries.
cool.
So it's been a blast. It's really, I'm shocked how fun it's been. And I'm also amazed at how beautiful it's going to look. So that has been what we've been doing. For our dancers, one of the weird things about it is that their Nutcracker experience generally starts in September and rehearses all the way through till December. So it's all fall into winter for them. But really what it's been this year is they rehearse their section, they film it, they're done. So we had people that were done with their Nutcracker experience the middle of October. So that's kind of weird for them. But the fact that they have been on film is so different than being on stage. The performing aspect is very different. And so learning the process of film and understanding angles, it's just been very educational for them, if not as long a commitment and joy. But the movie will be available. It'll be available on Mid-Columbia Ballet's Facebook page and on its website. Starting, we're saying that our unveiling will be December 11th, and it will go through December. It is a gift to the community. There is no charge to see this.
But donations will not be turned away.
I was just going to ask. Like, I'm sure that if somebody wanted to give you some money,
There's always, that's part of it. But there is not for this. Again, this is so the cost of the movie is being underwritten by our alumni association, Columbia Ballet alumni, who they fundraise each year for different gifts that they add to the Nutcracker. Last year, one of our we had created for the ballet a photo booth. I'm trying to think of what is that word? A photo booth that Cameron Milton, local artist, built, designed, and created for us. That would be in the lobby so that little children could get their picture taken in front of this beautiful Nutcracker scene. Of course, we thought that we were going to be, this would be the second year that we would unveil it, but we're not going to see it this year. But so each year we have a different project that the Alumni Association fundraise for. This year they are underwriting the entire thing for the Tri-Cities. So that's really fun and special. And though the alumni are all around the world, not necessarily in the Tri-Cities. So it's nice that they will also get to see a bit of their hometown on this movie as well. And it is a fantasy. So, you'll see Clara running through parts of Pasco, and as she turns a corner, she'll be in Richland. So it's not this is not geographical. It is a fantasy. So it will be kind of entertaining, and parts of it will be funny and parts of it will be touching and sweet and a little sentimental. So that's the movie. Now, fifth graders, the fifth grade experience, if you're not kind of aware of this, is it's kind of a rite of passage in our community that fifth graders do come and see the Nutcracker. And this is tough. It obviously can't happen. So we're going to, we have a study guide, an educational study guide that we are in the process of revamping to meet these times and address our movie and not our live performance, that we will be sending to all the 5th grade schools, and they will get the link to be able to, if kids are at home, they can watch it at home, or if they're in classes, they can watch it together. No matter what our kind of where we are in education, they'll be able to access the movie and the study guide to go along with it. So
I gotta say, if you don't follow the Academy on Facebook or Instagram, anywhere, they've been posting behind the scenes of the shoot, and it is like, as a Tri-Citian, it like melts my heart to see the Nutcracker, which I went to growing up here, and then seeing them with the backdrop of all these places in Tri-Cities. I mean, it is really, really cool to see. So I'm so excited. So thank you guys for doing that. I'm so excited.
thanks, Dee. Yeah, it has been a joy to be able to do this, and I've loved the process. Everybody involved has loved the process.
You'll recognize some Kennewick public art.
Yes.
Yeah, I will.
That's great. I can't wait to see it, and I'll have to check out the social media posts to get the behind the scenes view. That's really cool, and what a great example of nobody saw this coming. Everybody's been impacted, but we have to be creative and come up with ways to at least bridge the gap, and the goal would be survival in some cases. And so but that's awesome, because it almost gives you a chance to explore a whole new other perspective, I guess, of art. And the video is great, because I'm just trying to think of like, how would you cut that together? And you talk about angles and stuff. And I'm sure it's a whole new experience for everybody that's involved.
Yeah, actually, one of the things that's been kind of, anybody that's done any kind of theater understands how backstage, is not a place that's COVID safe. It's nothing about it. Costumes, all of those things are. And to try and figure out how to do that was difficult, because every time we use any part of a costume, it is used once by a child. Even costume fittings, when a child tried on a costume, that costume had to be bagged and cleaned and couldn't be tried on another child to see if it fit them better. So we had to, we had many challenges that we didn't even think about as challenges until we were in the midst of them and realized, wow, how hard this really was to be able to make it work. Masks, gloves, just to make sure kids were not near each other.
Sure.
We had to rehearse in parking lots because we needed more space, and it's been quite interesting.
I can't wait to see it. That we do have a question from the audience that I think connects to the next thing that we wanted to talk about this morning. But the question is about the Arts Center Task Force. I know, Devin, you sent me a link to it. And I don't know if the ballet, is involved in this effort to kind of create this performing arts center. But, Debra and Joel or Devin, you want to jump in and tell us a little bit about that and what the opportunity is, and if there's, fundraising or planning or something that people can participate in, how they can do that.
Joel, do you want me to tackle this
go ahead,
one, or
you were executive director?
Okay. Well, thank you, Joel. There are 4 partners for the Arts Center Task Force: the Mid-Columbia Symphony, Mid-Columbia Ballet, Mid-Columbia Master Singers, and the Mid-Columbia Musical Theater. And those 4 entities came together some time ago and start crafting a plan for an arts center. It was originally penciled in to be at Vista Field over in Kennewick, but things change. The economic landscape changes over time.
Sure.
And over the last year plus, the Arts Center Task Force has been communicating with the Richmond Public Facilities District, also known as the REACH, and developing an performing arts space right next to the REACH. And if you go back and look at some of the original Columbia Park West master plans, you will see on those original documents, you'll see the REACH, and adjacent to it is a public attractor number 2. And it was always hoped and dreamed that the performing arts space would be that public attractor number 2. So again, right now, the Arts Center Task Force is working with the Richmond PFD and generating a operational plan and a site plan, and we'll take it back to the Richland PFD, hopefully for adoption in March of 21, and then take it to City Council. But the performing arts space is dramatically needed. I have the pleasure of co-chairing the Life Council for My Tri 2030,
Yeah.
which created a top 10 list for ways to improve the quality of life in the Tri-Cities, and they surveyed over 4,000 individuals, and also did some qualitative surveys with some leaders in the Tri-Cities. And hands down, the number one aspect to improve the quality of life in the Tri-Cities is a performing arts space. And there's no reason why a metropolitan area on the size and scale as the Tri-Cities does not have a performing arts space. So the Arts Center Task Force is going to build an 800-seat auditorium with a gallery, as well as a community space. And that 800-seat is a magic number that where organizations could come and rent the space and hopefully fill it to capacity, but also allow some revenue streams and keep the Arts Center Task Force in the black, if you will. You mentioned the economy and the quality of life. I actually had the pleasure of working for the Powerhouse Theater in Walla Walla, and one of my jobs was to fill buses from the Tri-Cities and take them to Walla Walla. And we would go and we'd do the wine tour, and then we'd get off and we'd go catch an amazing performance at the Powerhouse Theater. I share that story just to demonstrate that the audience is here. The audience is hungry, and Walla Walla recognized that they needed to tap into our demographic to bring people to them, for them to survive. So my challenge to anyone listening in the Tri-Cities as a whole is, what steps are we going to take to make a performing arts center come to life here in the Tri-Cities, so we're not exporting our dollars or sending our dollars to another county. Let's keep our dollars here. And then to economic development, if we have an amazing world-class performing arts space where you can go catch the Nutcracker in the future, well, they're so big they might not fit in the 800-seat auditorium, but that doesn't mean you cannot catch a ballet show into the future at the Performing Arts Center. But my challenge to the Tri-Cities as a whole is, what steps are we going to take to make that come to reality, so that when TRIDEC or the BFCOG or the Ben Franklin Council of Governments is out there recruiting businesses to the Tri-Cities, we can talk about the world-class performing arts space that we have, the world-class art galleries that we have, because we are vibrant. We are very busy in the Tri-Cities. And I'm also a transplant, and early on when I moved here, people would tell me, well, there's nothing to do here. There's nothing to do because you're not looking. Even in this pandemic environment, there's still a lot of stuff and ways we can engage in the community. And once we come out on the back end of this challenge, this pandemic, I know the arts community is just gonna blossom. And we were already busy before, but I imagine us to be even more busy once we find a way out of this pandemic.
Oh, that's great. Joel, anything else to add on the Performing Arts Center or future plans or needs? It sounds like your home for the Nutcracker is larger than an 800-seat, and I've never been to the high school. But
our home for the Nutcracker is Richland High School Auditorium, which of course right now is under a renovation. One of the major problems that all of the arts groups have is finding a venue. Obviously, the high school auditoriums are for the high school, and rightly so, and they have certainly first right of refusal on dates. The biggest problem that any of the arts groups have is finding dates where they can get into that auditorium when it's not being used by the high school. Now, fortunately, Nutcracker is just a different animal, and it is grandfathered in. Nutcracker traditionally has been exactly the same week every single year, and the high school and Richland School District fortunately just pencils us in, and so we're grandfathered in. But we have to really hustle for any other dates that we want in the spring, or for any other performances that we want to do. What will happen in the future? I see that certainly Nutcracker will probably stay at Richland High School for the foreseeable future, but everything else that we do would go into this new Performing Arts Center. And it is needed by the community. And as Devin said, it's remarkable that a community of this size does not have a dedicated performing arts center of some kind. You know, I was hoping that Kennewick would get the link, which will accommodate larger shows than the Performing Arts Center that we're talking about. But the Performing Arts Center that we're talking about is going to have events all year long, every weekend. It will be busy at 800 seats. Whereas communities that maybe have a 2,500 seat theater, it's hard to keep that full. You know, you'll get the occasional big road show that, you know, the big Broadway success, and you will fill the venue. But, you know, for just every day, 800 seats is that magic number. And it's needed. It's been needed for many, many years. And
well, it sounds like you guys have it. I appreciate Devin's perspective on it, that, you know, the optimism coming out of COVID and how we can continue to build the arts community and build the support, and then, you know, actually show it in putting a plan together for the Performing Arts Center. I think that's great. We're down to about 4 minutes, and we have one more question that came up for Devin. So we'll get into that and then maybe go through, just if everybody wants to have a closing remark. But I just want to thank everybody for today. It's been great for me as the new guy, you know, to learn about the width and breadth of our arts community here in the Tri-Cities, and then what everybody's done, and such great stories on how you've all been able to pivot and kind of flex with the times to, you know, overcome COVID, which, you know, clearly we're not through yet, but really, really appreciate everybody's time. So the question for Devin is, has DBC considered doing an art show related to COVID? How to cope with it, understand it, survive it? And I think, you know, I just did want to give a plug for all of us in our communities maintaining our diligence on COVID precautions, because we are seeing this upswing. And I think the last thing that any of us want to do is go backwards in our stage, which would cause, you know, a huge and a recurrence of the impact that we've had on businesses, you know, to healthcare, possibly education, and those things. So just did want to remind everybody, we need to stay diligent, continue to follow the guidelines so we can be safe and we can continue to move forward and get out of COVID. But Devin, any thoughts about that? Like from an art perspective, like, you know, putting a show around COVID and how to cope and deal with it?
I think that's a great topic. We did do the Something Hopeful Please in April, but this is a topic maybe from a mental health perspective, or just how are we dealing with it might be an avenue to move forward. We did partner with NAMI Tri-Cities, which is a mental health organization, and did a show called Invisible, which was around mental health, safety within the community. And so that there's always an opportunity to do another similar show. The cool thing with DBC, and at least from our perspective related to the arts, is there are no rules. And what we can do, if there is a demand for it, we can add this element into the Indigo show that's going to happen in 2021. We can literally make the show what we want it to be. And we're fluid. We always roll with the punches. And so I will take Gabriel's idea back to the board and the planning committee and see where we can go from there.
That's awesome. Well, while we're on, you want to give a closing statement, and I'll thank you in advance for your time today.
Well, I just wanted to thank the opportunity for TriDeck and inviting me to this panel. I just want to just mention that all the artists in the Tri-Cities, and people like Debra and Joel and the Arts Commission, we all recognize that the value of the individuals that are creating. And I just want the community to consider us as also as essential employees, and think about the jobs that each one of our organization creates, both in direct and indirect monies, and just think about the value and the impact we bring to all of your lives. The Nutcracker is a cornerstone of the holiday season. So as you watch the video this winter, you know, think about the performers that went into it, and think about Debra and Joel and how they've dedicated their lives in giving back to the community through artistic expression. Great
point. Thanks, Devin. We'll go to Dee next. Dee, thanks for your time this morning. Thanks for joining us. Really good conversation. I learned a lot. So do you have a closing remark you want to make?
Well, one, I'm just so flattered to be here. This is so great to have any platform to talk about this. But I will just say that, from an economic development standpoint and as a young professional in the Tri-Cities, I think that COVID has really taught us a lot about remote working and remote working opportunities. And I think that investing in quality of life, which the arts community is a huge part of, whether it's in public, performing, visual, is a huge part of that quality of life. And if we don't improve that, we're risking losing workforce we already have, let alone retaining a new workforce. So from a money standpoint, and as someone who hopes to grow industry and business in Tri-Cities, this is more important now than ever, I would argue, as people now have more options to work outside of this area. So consider that when you're thinking about spending money. Also, if you are driven to supporting and facilitating art, there will be openings for commissioners on the Kennewick Arts Commission. I know Pasco just started an arts commission. Richland has an arts commission. Check those vacancies because the best way to support is to be involved. And finally, buy art. Buy it. Put your money where your mouth is. Buy art. That's all I got.
That's perfect. Thanks. Thank you, Dee. Well, again, last but not least, but Debra and Joel, thanks for your time this morning. And you guys mentioned before that you tune in to Coffee with Karl. If you can say that, tune in. We're not broadcasting; it's just a Zoom call. But thanks for being part of our audience and then joining us this morning. It's great to meet you guys virtually, and really appreciate your time. If you have some closing remarks,
Good to be here.
Yeah, it is good to be here. Thank you. And the only other thing I'd like to throw in there is, I'm just kind of, adding on to how important the arts are, that we talk about a lot in our business, that an arts education is not necessarily to create more artists. So, that basically creating an artist is a byproduct of what we do in an arts education, is that we feel that our job is to make, to help young people love the arts and not necessarily to create artists. We want them to grow up to be whole humans that will contribute to their community, whether it's the Tri-Cities or wherever they move, so that, because we know that the arts does bring and elevate the quality of life, and that is so very important for all of us, especially at this time.
for sure.
Yeah.
Joel, anything to add?
Nope, nothing to add.
Okay. Well, for all of our guests this morning, really, really appreciate your time. This has been a really good conversation, and that's another chance besides, a platform to talk about the arts and the impact and the COVID impacts, just to talk about the connections in between what we all do in our day jobs or in our volunteer time. And really, that's part of our community and why the Tri-Cities is such a great place to live and to do business and raise a family, as we all know. So thanks again for your time this morning. Next Monday, the 16th, we do have a special Coffee with Karl. We're going to be on 11 with Dr. Pearse from the Health District. And we are going to talk about this diligence to try to make sure that we don't go backwards on our stages and openings. So if you have a chance, Monday at 11, you can check out the TriDec webpage and look for a link. So again, thanks for your time this morning, and everybody have a great weekend.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.